everyone. You're welcome to this edition of The Inside. I am Babla Jonathan. In this edition of the program, we're going to be looking at what young people can do to promote, to consolidate peace in Cameroon and the rest of the African continent. We are looking at the involvement of young people in the peace process, not only in Cameroon but across the continent. And we'll start by analyzing some of the recent happenings in the northwest and southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon after the 14 October 2021 incident in the southwest region of Chieftain Boy, in which a primary school pupil was killed. Another similar incident comes up or occurs in the town of Bamenda, northwest region of the country, where a primary three pupil was shot down, and of course by an element of the National Armed Forces, and this provoked commotion, anger, frustration, confusion, demonstrations in the town of Bamenda, and these incidents are provoking condemnation from across the board. And we're going to be looking at how to move away from these happenings and have peace all around the country and the rest of the African continent, notably the involvement of young people in the peace process. Meet our guest in some few seconds. Latest information streaming into our newsroom indicates that several soldiers or elements of the National Armed Forces have been killed, and some civilians in the Mezam Division, northwest region of the Republic of Cameroon. And this is coming after the killing of a Class 3 pupil in the northwest region of Chieftain Bamenda by a police officer. And this is one of the sad incidents recorded within the context of the close to 5-year-long armed conflict in the northwest and southwest regions of the Republic. And here with me in the studio in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala, to my right, Donald Ngateng is a young Cameroonian who works with a youth-led organization, Cameroon Youth Assembly, CYA, which has as mission building a peaceful and sustainable world through the empowerment of young people with skills that need to better their communities. And he is one of the 17 members of the Youth Mediators Network charged with heralding youth participation in the peace process in the world and in Cameroon, of course. Donald, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Babila. To begin with, young people are a strategic avenue to end hostilities, promote a peaceful and just society. So I'm very, very happy to be here to share aspects of youth participation in the peace process.
Right, and to my left, Kengafek Enes is the national youth, is a national and international or continental youth leader. He is the Libyalen Divisional President of the Cameroon National Youth Council, Continental President of the African Patriotic Youth Council movement, and this movement has as major objective the prevention or the promotion of African solutions for African problems. He is the founder of Kengafak Multi-Service Business and Youth Development Association. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Babila Jonathan. It's a pleasure to be here once more to discuss issues affecting the continent and Cameroon in particular, to see how we as young people can raise our voices towards peace and how to achieve that peace.
And young people move along with advice from the elders, advice from those who are ahead of us. We are all young people on this set, and we are joined from Bamako, Mali, by Dr. Eta Ewane. He is a political scientist, or better still, a professor of political science at the Karlshochschule International University. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Babila, for yet another invitation, and it's a great pleasure to meet the two other colleagues so we can exchange our views on the happenings in the country.
Right, I begin with you, Dr. Itaiwana. What's your take on this other sad incident recorded in the northwest region of the country within the context of the close to 5-year-long armed conflict, the killing of a Class 3 pupil by a police officer?
This adds further to the previous killing of Carol Louise in Boya. I think it's regrettable for a country like Cameroon that within a month, 2 babies have been shot. Not by armed terrorists, as the government refers to the people, the Amazonian fighters, but they've been shot using bullets that have been purchased using the taxpayers' money. So it's quite regrettable. And the only crime committed by these 2 little girls is that they were trying to go to school. They were trying to acquire education to be better citizens.
The young Carolise was gunned down by a gendarme officer in Boya while she was going to school. And the class 3 pupil in the northwest regional capital, Bamenda, was shot by a police officer while returning to school. And after this, we have information reaching us indicating that some elements of the National Armed Forces have been killed in an ambush by non-state armed group fighters, and some civilians also killed in Santa.
Yeah, I think like we've said before, this is a conflict that started as a peaceful demonstration, and we've seen how this has been transforming into a full-blown war. Now, what we are experiencing is a complete urbanization of the conflict. We see the continuous use of unexploded explosive devices, and this is becoming too dangerous. So I think it's time for those who have the powers to make decisions in Cameroon to reconsider their positions and go in for dialogue. Or I think, I think the period for dialogue is over. So it's time for them to start negotiating with the Amazonians, because the conflict is leaving the hinterlands and it's moving towards the major cities in Cameroon. And who knows what will happen in the coming weeks. So every soul that is lost in this conflict is a big loss for Cameroon, whether they are Amazonian fighters or they are members of the armed and defense forces. These are all Cameroonians. So there's no reason why we should lose any soul in this conflict. It's a conflict that was not even supposed to be.
All right, King of Enes, the reaction to this last incident recorded in the northwest region.
I think it's a sad story. We were together in Boya marching in protest of what happened last few weeks, and yesterday watching another incident of similar in a similar way was heartbreaking. So we really wish to call on the government to re-emphasize on how the security forces should operate in the field, especially when we are being young people are being targeted. And the question yesterday I received most from the youth is why only in the English region. So there is a lot of question sign in that domain, but we as young people, we continue to play a mediation role for peace to return. And we also know that peace cannot return when there is no possibility for that peace to return. That is to say that if people are anxious for change, the only way to change that person is another idea, is not bullet. So that is what we hope to do, and we use ideas to change people's mind, to ask them to put down guns. It's only an idea that can play a role. That is what I think.
All right, I turn to you now, Donat Gaten. You certainly followed the incident that happened in Bamenda this week, with videos going viral on social media with the population displaying the corpse of the class 3 people demonstrating in the town of Bamenda with the corpse and taking it to the governor's office and so on. When you watched those images, what was your first reaction?
I think that the crisis is long overdue to begin with, and those images are not things to think about. That is a very sad situation for our country, that we keep on losing people, more to that young people in particular, because since the beginning of this crisis, I think the youth population has lost the highest, and even getting to the level of babies coming back from school. So I think that it was a very sad situation, and it only goes ahead to call the need for an end to this crisis, the need for participation in the peace process from every other person. So it's something I don't really want to think or talk about, because when you see the way, I imagine the parents of that young child, you see your child being paraded in cops. So I just think that it's just a call for ceasefire, for an end to this violence and hostility. And just to mention that violence and hostility can lead us nowhere. We need to sit, we need to talk, we need to engage, and we need to find a lasting solution to the crisis plaguing the northwest and southwest region of the country.
And before the class 3 people killed in Bamenda, several students were wounded in the University of Buea in an explosion that was the third within a very short space of time. And yesterday, you and other inhabitants of Buea, including the leaders, elected officials like the Member of Parliament for Buea, Oban, Honorable Malumba Isembe, and other persons, traditional rulers, were on the streets protesting against this latest development, this latest twist of the Anglophone crisis, the conflict which is bringing in now explosive devices, not only targeting soldiers as it was the case before, but now targeting civilians.
I think in that domain, no matter whatever we do on the street and in the media, what stands as a solution to the crisis is to call the parties involved to talk about the end of the crisis. The end of the crisis is not in our hands; it's in the hands of the authority that has partners to sit with. Now, we were just doing as we're supposed to do as when things like that happen. We as activists, youth leaders, we're supposed to play a role to see that we bring peace into the situation. Now, for how long are we going to be doing that? So the best way to resolve the crisis is to call on the authority to call the parties involved to sit and discuss, so that it can be a major way out to this. Because no matter how we keep prolonging and preaching, the solutions will come from the table, and there is no need using weapons when the actual solutions will have to go through a soft copy or a soft method.
What was in the memorandum that you people handed to the governor of the Southwest region?
So far, we requested that there should be measures put in place to secure young people who are anxious to go to school, and also the security is not enough. And I also believe that the security can never be enough when the right mindset is not put in place. So the right mindset, as I said, will also go back to giving people the ability to believe that there is a conducive atmosphere for studies, because the partners involved of the crisis are also accepting to talk. So when there is that atmosphere put in place, there is automatically peace coming into play, because when people know that the actors involved are speaking and discussing measures way out to end the crisis, there will be a relative peace. So we requested that there should be security and a reformation of mindset towards how the thinking of resolving the crisis is taken. And we also believe that the authority should be the one to step in with as major actor to the crisis and propose measures that are sounding enough to the people and to the country at large.
There should be security, there should be a conducive atmosphere for studies, and authorities have been saying that security measures have been taken and encouraging parents in those two regions to send their children to school. But when children are killed on the way to school and on their way from school, there's a question mark that the people are now placing on that security measure, or the security measures, and their safety that is guaranteed by state authorities. What should be done at this level?
I just think that I don't think that the government actually instructs for the killing of children going to school and all this happen. I just think that these things are done by individuals, and I think that they should face the law, because it keeps happening. It should not end at talking, we'll do this or that. They should face the law. For example, we cannot imagine that it happened in Boya and it happened in Bamenda yesterday. So I just think that sanctions should be given out so that individuals, if I commit this kind of crime which brings down the nation, I will be sanctioned. I think that there should be open sanctions for this kind of violations. And Mr. Babala, just to say, the people are not happy because relatively parents want to send their children to school, but I tell you they are kind of discouraged now because it's taking a trend that the insecurity is taking a trend. But it happened in Boya, people thought it was an error, and it happens again. I would think it's an error, but another mama out there or some parent out there might not think. So I just think that there should be clear sanctions, because acts like this bring down the integrity of the image of the nation. Because I don't think that they are willfully trained. I don't think that the military is willfully trained to come out and carry such activities. I just think that the psychology of the military men at times, because this has a lot to play when it comes to aspects like this. So I don't think that it's actually something good, and it's very, very discouraging as of now. Particularly the incident that happened in Bamenda, because it's taking a different turn. The police are violent now.
Dr. Ita Iwane, Donald thinks that it's taking a different turn, it's taking a new twist with what's happening now. But about the explosives in Boya now targeting civilians, what's your analysis of this new development as far as the crisis is concerned in the northwest and southwest regions?
Yeah, the new twist that we are experiencing, it's something that was predictable. And I think you and me have had programs in which I kept on warning the government that this would obviously happen, because the urbanization of conflict, it's just a demonstration of the further deterioration of the conflict. And we are experiencing today, what we are seeing today is the continuous use of improvised explosive devices. And there is a clear goal behind this. The goal is to create panic, is to create fear in order to achieve certain political goals. And the government had the opportunity to avoid this. They didn't do it. The time to make certain decisions, they slept on their laurels, and the facts are there today, and we have to face them. It's not about criticizing today. It's not about government making promises of providing security. They are not in any measure today to be able to provide that kind of security. We saw an explosive device, an IED that exploded in a taxi and killed a taxi driver. You never know who placed them there or when those people come. So you're dealing with an unknown enemy. It's an asymmetric warfare. And here it's difficult to predict because you don't know who the enemy is. And so if they consider all these people to be Cameroonians, so why don't they call them to a negotiation table and try to sort things out before we lose many more lives?
Dr. Itaiwane, when the explosive devices leave the streets, leave the cabs, and get into an amphitheater in a university campus, what can we read within the lines?
Yeah, when it gets to that level, it's a clear indication that we've all lost it collectively as a people. It will not only be about the government then, because we all will be at risk, because we all visit these places, we all visit the theaters, we all visit the cinema halls, and we all go to football matches. So these are potential targets for such attacks. And so marketplaces, we all go to the market on one occasion or the other. So we all visit public places. And this is a possibility because those who are placing those explosive devices will not end in the Southwest. They will not stop at placing them in taxis. They will look for other soft targets. And with that, I think we are going to see an exponential increase in the number of deaths. And I think this will be a loss for us as a people. So it's time, we can't stop at saying this. We can't stop at reminding the government that it is time for them to make a unilateral declaration of a ceasefire. They have the power to do that. So we can stop fighting while people sit down and seek for solutions.
All right, we're going to take a look at what the newspapers reported this week. Immaculate Fogwe takes us to the press or to the newsstands. And after that, we'll look at what young people can do, what young people can bring in as contribution to the peace process, to efforts to restore peace and normalcy, not only in the northwest and southwest regions, but across the Republic of Cameroon and the African continent. Stay with us.
As reported by the Post-Weekender, at least 11 students got injured in the University of Boya bomb blast. Vice-Chancellor calls for calm. The Garden Post says explosive device kills driver, shatters taxi in Boya. Another edition of the Garden Post reports separatist fighters intercept and mercilessly torture passengers. The Sun, Anglophone crisis, Toronto conclave sparks hope for Swiss talks. The Voice, Chief Moja's pregnant prisoner Kongsu Antoinette gives birth to a baby boy but is locked up in the hospital. The Star states, alleged sexual harassment rocks Limbe City Council. The Herald Tribune exclaims, President Paul Biya's anniversary, 39 years in power and still counting. The Post, CPDM militant in the Northwest region begs Biya to run for 2025 presidential election again. The Median, CPDM militant, spoils the 39th anniversary of President Paul Biya's reign over the CPDM Meme 1 section presidency power tussle between Kumba City Mayor Gregory Mewanu and Member of Parliament Tabot Lawson.
Thank you, Immaculate Fogwe, for the press review. Kengafak, NS, you are a national and continental youth leader. Before we talk about youth involvement in the peace process, let's first of all try to understand why young people are at the center of violence today in Cameroon and the rest of the African continent, or notably the African countries where there are security challenges. Young people are often at the center of violence in those countries. Why?
Yeah, I think the challenge that young people are at the center of violence in most African countries is because young people do not have an option. That is employment option. They have talent, but they don't have the ability to expand their talents. The government is not doing enough to put in place measures that can accommodate young people's skills. That is one of the major reasons why you find young people today running into violence as the only survivor means. You have to understand, Mr. Babila, that most of these crisis countries, especially Cameroon, 90% of those involved are young people. I don't think they are there because they want to be there. They are there because they lack an alternative way out. What is the government putting in place to see that young people upon graduation, they have, what type of education is first of all given to these young people? And after the education, what is the government measures put in place to see? I still find a young man and a group of them coming to me to complain that 15 years after they are in youth and teachers training, they have not been able to employ. How do you expect that young man who has gone into professional school, spend money to pay tax, mandat and the rest, and at the end of the day, the certificate is not valuable? What did you expect of such a young man and such a young lady? What do you expect of them if, like I always say, when young people become vulnerable, they try to use any means out to survive? So we call on the government to put measures in place that will bring hopes for the young people, because when you are hopeless, you can do anything to regain your hopes. For instance, in the National Youth Council, we've been struggling to relate the information of the young people to the authority. and yet we have not received the appropriate response from the government. For instance, for the past 3 years, the National Youth Council have not been able to get their subvention. How do you expect a National Youth Council that is very close to the young people on the ground to function without institutional backup? So you have to, sometimes you just want to see that as a political instrument put in place to control the young people, and it is very late for the young people today, because the level at which they are educated today become very challenging for government to succeed in that domain.
But we have the case of General No Pity, for example, the known state armed group fighter in the northwest region. We're told that he was doing some business in the southwest region, notably in Boya, selling yogurts on the streets. From that, he started doing some kind of transportation within the town with a commercial motorbike, and later on the former mayor of Boya, Patrick Esonge, said no more circulation of commercial motorbikes within the town of Boya, and that is how he moved back to the northwest region and later became a separatist fighter. But should this alone justify the involvement of young people?
That is just an example to many examples that you will want. For some of us that are very close to the youth and speaking to them day in, day out, we realize some of them created businesses, and at the level of executing the business, taxes come in to play a role, and they end up going to some shops have been locked for more than 6 months today because they did not have 50,000 to pay before they operate. And this, when you keep getting this complaint, sometimes the government policy should be well analyzed, and it should not be in people's pocket. That is to say, officials come into the workplace. We also find a lady in Douala here who left the saloon to travel abroad and died in the Mediterranean Sea. So you have to, there are a lot of circumstances that we can keep mentioning, but what is the role of government in this situation? The government have to put in place institutions that are respected. For instance, as I just mentioned, how would the National Youth Council, the Cameroon National Youth Council, for the entire body that have to look into the affairs of the youth, not have subvention to operate as an institution? How would they operate? No functioning budget. That is a window dressing institution. Those are areas where when youth start asking question of, you are the youth leader, why are you not playing a role to bring in opportunities for the youth, and you keep telling them this, they cannot believe.
Your hands are tied. All right.
I wanted to comment on why young people get into violence.
Right.
He began by talking about unemployment. Yes, throughout Africa, youth unemployment is a major cause of youth radicalization because young people don't have an alternative or an option. But I just think that it should not rest only on the government, but on the young people themselves, because even in the youth unemployment, other young people are making it. We are talking about skills, vocational skills, and all the rest. Young people should be able to acquire skills. Yes, our educational system, like you said, is not skillful enough. But that very educational system talks about LMD and BMP, the 40, 60, 60 for the student and 40 for the teacher. So I just think that young people must get out of the box. Secondly, Mr. Babila, is not only about unemployment; it's also about gains. Young people see, for example, some crises are promising. Young people think that when they get into a crisis, they will make gains. So yes, if I can easily have gains, so why sit here and do a business when I can get gains in a crisis? Thirdly, you have political manipulations. Politicians at times manipulate young people to fall victim to get into violence. So you have political manipulation, you have the gains that are being promised across Africa, you have also unemployment, which is recurrent in Africa. So I think that those are some of the aspects that cause young people to get into crises such as this, or to get into violent armed conflict like ours. That's just what I think.
Dr. Itai Iwane, young people involved in violence here and there, northwest, southwest, far north, across the republic, even here in the economic capital, Douala, young people are often involved in violent activities across the town, And across the African continent, we have this phenomenon of young people who are involved in violence. Do you think it's just a problem of unemployment and maybe political manipulation, like Enes and Donald highlighted? Right, some little issues there with the connection with Bamako. We're going to come back to you, Dr. Itai Ewane, for you to give you analysis of this problem of young people involved or being involved in violence across the continent. And of course, this is a problem that is affecting many African countries, many young people who are also killed, who are also paying a huge price in the violence, in the crisis, in the socio-political tensions across the African continent. And now we want to look at what young people should do to put an end to all this violence, or to contribute in efforts to restore peace and normalcy in the two English-speaking regions of the country, in the far north region, across the Republic, across the African continent. You are a continental youth leader, kind of Enes.
Yeah, Mr. President.
What should young people do? What can young people do in this context of crisis everywhere?
Yeah, I think as a continental youth president for African Patriotic Youth Council movement, has been our objective been achieving African solutions to African problems. We have identified most of these crises because the lack of patriotism is one of the major causes where we want to believe that nothing good again can come from our nation, nothing good again can come from Africa. So we believe that it's high time we have a mindset reformation towards our thinking as young people, and believe that we as young people, if we come together and join our ideas, we can quickly resolve our challenges ourselves without necessarily looking up to the government that has failed us for far too long. And we start now doing, because we know that in Nigeria somebody is good in IT industry, somebody in Cameroon is good in agriculture. These skills can easily be exchanged, and employment is being created across the board of the continent. And when we talk about African solutions to African problems, we believe that these are the way we start thinking, and this is the way we start going forward by looking at these challenges. Because if we see Cameroon problem as a continental problem, I was so embarrassed today, Mr. Babila Jonathan, to find out some president in the Central African region moving to France for a peace resolution of a crisis in Libya, while Central Africa itself is in trouble. So we don't really, we are still to understand that a problem in Cameroon cannot necessarily be separated from a problem in Nigeria, because at the end of the day, the refugees in Cameroon will fly to Nigeria to seek refuge, and at the end of the day, it's no longer a Cameroon problem, it becomes an international problem, it becomes a continental problem. Why not put in place rules and regulation, or the AU put in place some measures that can be able to sanction leaders who are not able to play a vital leadership role, and rather cause crisis to the region that end up affecting other regions of the continent. So we look at this and we said, we as young people, because of the skills, because of the knowledge, because we believe that we are the only generation of Africa that can make a change that can be sustainable for the continent, for now and for the future to come, because we've read the history of enslavement, colonialism, and today we are faced with new colonialism. And if we as young people don't play a role now, we will not be able to move the continent forward, and the future will be darker than it is now.
All right, before I come to you, Donald, let me go to Dr. Itai Ewane. Let's go back to Dr. Itai Ewane in Bamako, Mali. Doctor, what's your opinion about the fact that young people are often at the center of violence in Cameroon and other African countries?
Okay, Mr. Babila, thank you for that question again, and sorry about the technical hitches. And I was saying, I was craving your indulgence to grant me some few minutes, so I try to offer an explanation that is based on empirical evidence for us to understand why there are more young people involved in conflict in Cameroon and the continent as a whole. I think the explanations offered by the two other colleagues are valid, but they appear to me to be quite simplistic. So they tend to, for me, it's an oversimplification of a far more complex reality. Now, for us to begin to understand why there are more young people involved in conflict in Cameroon and the entire continent, I think we have to start by looking at the demographic realities of Cameroon. And recent statistics reveal that over 60% of the Cameroonian population is below 25. This implies that Cameroon has an overwhelmingly youthful population, and that's the case for the rest of the continent. And so if we take into consideration these demographic realities of Cameroon in general and those of the Northwest and Southwest regions in particular, we can easily discern the potential youth hold for change and positive action. So this is particularly the case with the recent wave of conflict and humanitarian crisis in the two regions of the Northwest and the Southwest. So the category of persons referred to as youth in Cameroon is a non-homogeneous social construction. It's quite heterogeneous in terms of gender, in terms of culture, in terms of religion, and also in terms of political affiliation. So the Cameroonian youth have multifaceted roles to play. So they can be heroes as well as victims. They can be saviors and courageous in the midst of crisis, as we have seen. You talked about the General No Pity, as well as criminals in the towns and military entrepreneurs in the two war zones. And irrespective of which lens you're using, whether the government lens or the Amazonian lens, one thing stands out clear. The soldiers fighting are overwhelmingly young people. The Amazonian fighters are all young people because they make up a bulk of the Cameroonian population. So the youth in Cameroon vacillate between two extremes. On the one hand, youths are viewed as vulnerable, powerless, and in need of protection. And on the other hand, they are feared as dangerous, violent, apathetic, and as threats to security. So youths are subjected to stereotypical images of being angry, drugged, and violent as a threat, especially those who participate in the ongoing armed conflict as combatants. So on the other hand, the positioning of the youths in Cameroon has a bearing on their leadership potential and their possible role in the restoration of peace. So the tension between young people in Cameroon and the old has been one of the key features of intergenerational shifts pertaining to the control over power, resources, and politics in Cameroon, in the country. So the tension we experience in Cameroon today lies in the palpable impatience of young compatriots, their desire to strive for more, their willingness to be seen as responsible and capable, and the structural barriers to their social mobility that we've seen since the advent of the New Deal government of Mr. Paul Biya since 1982. So independence from others and responsibility for others, such as taking care of a family or household, are all defining markers of prerequisite of social adulthood. So this is the major issue in Cameroon. It's an intergenerational struggle. The youths are struggling to get opportunities. The old are there occupying everything, and the frustrations increase with time. So it's this desire of the youths to free themselves from this kind of mental slavery that is the root cause of the conflict that we are experiencing today. So we should avoid focusing on the consequences of the conflict and start looking at the root causes, the frustrations. Where are these frustrations coming from? Why are the youth so frustrated? It's because the old are there. They are refusing to leave. It's not uncommon in Cameroon to find a young man who goes from primary school, secondary school, high school, obtains a degree, and eventually goes on retirement without working for a single day. I have seen cases. I was in Cameroon recently, and I met a classmate of mine who obtained a degree from the Yaoundé University with me together in 1994. He's not worked for a single day. He's still looking for jobs. It's incredible, and this is the frustration.
But there's an issue about this job searching mentality. Young people who are always searching for jobs, looking for white-collar jobs, and so on. But away from this, I was asking Kengafak earlier, is it enough for a young person to get into violence simply because he doesn't have a job, or she hasn't got a job, or because she didn't have a loaf of bread to eat in the morning, and then that's enough to get into violence?
Was that question meant for me or for Mr. Kengafak?
Dr. Ita?
Okay, yeah, Mr. Babila, like I already explained. Now, taking away all the opportunities from the youth, it's confiscating their lives completely. Now, when I quote a case of someone who obtained a degree in 1994, and up to 2021, he has not had the opportunity to exercise a professional activity, what do you expect from such a person? They become extremely vulnerable. And let me just tell you, now, in this situation, the government creates a vacuum. And when you create a vacuum, someone will obviously come in and occupy it. Now, you've said that, quite often we've heard the government accusing the diaspora and other groups for financing the conflict. If that is true, I cannot confirm this allegation. But if that is true, it means these groups are offering an opportunity. So they are effectively occupying a vacuum, because in financing, it means they give the youth at least an opportunity to earn their own livelihood, to be able to feed themselves, something they did not get from the state. So it's an over-accumulation of frustrations. So it's not just because of the absence of a job. No. If you don't have a job, so many other things will come with it. Just like I said, the youth also want to take responsibility. People want to build families. They have relatives, mothers and fathers. They want to take care. Okay. They want to free themselves. They want to feel like independent human beings. And when you seize away all these opportunities, you push them to the extremes, and they become extremely vulnerable. So they can, everyone, including you, Mr. Babila, and myself, have in us that potential to use violence. All you need is to get the push. If you're pushed to the wall, you will be left with no other choice. I mean, I did a research one time for in the far north of Cameroon on the activities of Boko Haram, and I was able to meet some of the young people who enrolled in the ranks of Boko Haram. And when I asked them, why did you join a terrorist organization? I got the same answer. We did not have any other choice. So when the government doesn't offer choices to its citizens, it exposes them to some of the ills that might plague the entire society.
All right. Donald, are young people adequately involved in the peace process in Cameroon and the African continent as much as they are involved in violence?
I think that any peace process that excludes young people will not work. And regrettably, young people in Cameroon have been sidelined, like he said, when it comes to aspects of maybe political activity, economic activity, or maybe governance too. And when it comes to the peace process, it's always the cry of young people to be involved. Dr. Etta was saying that demographically we make up 70% of the population. Young people aspire to be involved in the peace process. Since 2016, since 2014, Cameroon has been plagued by either a crisis in the north, far north, southwest and northwest, and in the east too. But measures have been put in place. We see that these measures at times, even though put in place, still lack something. still lack those who are involved in the violence, because majority of the young people, majority of the violence and the armed conflict has young people, like Dr. Eta was saying. So any peace process without young people is actually not working. It's not inclusive. That's why there are major cries of young people. That's why we young people who want to be involved in the peace process in Cameroon. It's true that yes, we are giving at times a little bit of involvement, but we should be majority. We should either be in the room, around the room, or outside the room. Those are terms when it comes to youth mediation, negotiation, or involvement in the peace process. So you young people want to be involved when it comes to designing, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of aspects that lead to the peace process. We won't talk about peace process now, Mr. Babilo. We'll look at the opportunities and the challenges. Oftentimes in Africa and in Cameroon in particular, young people are looked at with the lenses of being violent. Nobody wants to think that young people can provide solutions to such a crisis. We are only looked as being the violent ones, the people committing the crisis. So I just think that young people are not given enough chance to mediate this crisis.
Young people want to be involved. Wanting to be involved is one thing, and being able to be involved and be productive is another thing.
Mr. Babila, being involved in the peace process entails a lot. The trainings, the financing, and the legalization. That's why we are saying that we want to be involved. The government should be able to train young people when it comes to the peace process. Like, for example, 17 of us were commissioned by the Ministry of External Relations, MINJEC, and the British High Commission, and the Canadian High Commission, UNESCO, and the United Nations. These are aspects that we want to see more of. Many more young people should be trained, not just trained, given the finance, not just the finance, also given the legalization. I should be able to present myself as a peace mediator, and we are recognized under an umbrella as Cameroon Youth Peace Mediation. For now, we are just 17 of us. There are other young people who can do this, but they don't have the training. So the government should be able, the government and other stakeholders should be able to train young people, not only training, finance them, and also give them the legalization. Because you cannot say you are talking about productivity. Young people will not be productive if they are not trained, or they are not given the legalization or the finance. So involvement or the opportunity, involvement entails a lot. Young people want to sit on the table too. I bet you in Cameroon that young people, when it comes to peace mediation, I think that the solution to this crisis is young people.
All right, we're going to take some interviews right now. I'll be back in some few minutes.
Ibad, my sister, Ibad, Ibad. I can't come up for the scene. I be there around that area for new road entrance. I come up for the scene. As in that way, military they move passengers from motor, so when they enter they for run. Meanwhile, some of we who rush, carry the big rush with them for PMI. Who go for them and declare dead. Now you won't carry on the car for Kasi governor for say if fine for who go where so that's what they kill we every day.
A young girl coming back from school where seriously wounded as a result of the fire incident. The investigations are going on to confirm the real reason of her demise. But I want to reassure you people that the author of the gunshot, the policeman, has been already remanded into custody. And after the investigation, he will be strongly sanctioned if it is confirmed after the autopsy that it is his gunshot that has killed that young girl coming from school. And it brings me to think of my own daughter. That if I've lost today, my daughter, and the head of state himself has called me to express his deep concern after that incident, asking me to extend to the bereaved family his word of condolence, instructing me also to take necessary measures to make sure that school children is given a befitting burial.
Your memorandum will be forward and land on the highest tables you can imagine. And because you are marching for peace, you are marching for love, you are marching to protect what is cherished to all communities. You are marching to protect a sacred institution, university. You are marching to protest against those who want to disrupt the good functioning of the education. You are marching against the ill-intentioned brothers and sisters who have been welcomed here, who are welcome here on a daily basis. I want to tell you that you are right. If you don't protect peace, security in your land, the administration, the forces of law and order will continue to work, but with no base, with no support. Today, the city of Boya, the population has doubled. Everybody can testify. The population has doubled because people are coming to take refuge, to protect themselves, to feel secure in Boya. And they are coming to Boya to feel secure because you, the people of Boya, with the administration, the forces of law and order, under the call from the head of state, you have said no to violence. And the situation is coming back to normalcy, or has come back to normalcy in Boya, in the southwest region. You must protect your achievement towards peace, towards security. And you are marching today. You will be marching every day to protect this peace, to protect the security, to protect the school, to protect your children, our children. So you are right. We witnessed this sad event. The first event where people came here, it was an accident. People marched. But incident caused by the explosive are well planned. How is it that people, after all what we have done, even if there are problems, the problems are none, the head of state said, we are going to solve all those problems, and he has given the appropriate institutions to solve and to handle all those problems. How is it that some of our brothers still go for violence?
Right, we are wrapping up this edition of The Inside in a few seconds. King Afak Ernest, what do you want government to do at this point for young people to be more involved in the peace process?
I want to see government giving the opportunity for young for youth to be among the leaders, because when a young man at 20 finds somebody advising him at 90 as a leader, it doesn't draw attention. So if a young man at 25 is seeing somebody at 30 being as a leader or close to him, he will quickly listen to that person. So we want to see youth leaders or youth representation in leadership and in all aspects of life. Youth is not too small to be a minister or to handle any post in Cameroon today, because we are intelligent enough. Some of them are having their PhD at 26, 27. Right. So that confirms that. And for the second, to talk about the APYCM conference holding in Boya on the 27th, to talk about Cameroon solutions to Cameroon problems and African solutions to African problems. We invite all the Cameroon youth and other international youth to participate online and physically in Boya Council Hall. Thank you so much for being with us.
All right, Donald Gateng, a few seconds.
I just want to say that despite the fact that young people are not involved in the peace process, there are many other young people who are practically doing well when it comes to initiatives that lead to peace building and modest peace practices. I want to thank Local Youth Corner for continually training young people, particularly who were trained by them. I want to thank African United Foundation. In fact, I beg the government to continue to train young people, give them the finance and give them the legalization so that they could be involved positively when it comes to peace building. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Ita Ewane, in some few seconds, what should be done as a matter of urgency to bring many more young people on board the peace process in Cameroon and Africa?
I think the most immediate step to take is a declaration of a cessation of hostilities. The government needs to make a unilateral declaration of a ceasefire, and in order to set in place a viable process of reconciliation. Okay, and this will require the government to engage the youths in peace building in a wider perspective, and this can be ensured through arts, culture, tourism, sports, and education. This is because I'm saying this because the innovativeness and creativeness of young people in those areas could be mobilized effectively by connecting them with wider peace-building objectives, such as building bridges between divided communities that as we are seeing right now in the Northwest and the Southwest, and the entire nation is divided. I'm sorry to say this, but even along linguistic lines. And I heard someone talk about the head of state taking measures. Honestly, I don't know if Cameroon has a head of state. Cameroon is a sinking ship that has long been abandoned by the captain. So I would just emphasize on what I think Mr. Kengafak said already. It is important to provide youth with training opportunities to take an active part in peace building. So with their youthful energy, capabilities, and ability of adaptation to new technological trends, for example, youth could act as mediators, like the colleague already mentioned. They could be community mobilizers. They could be humanitarian workers and peace brokers. So there are a lot of things that need to be done. Right. All we are asking for, there should be a clear demonstration of political will coming from the highest office. Unfortunately, that highest office is empty.
Dr. Ita Ewane, Professor of Political Science, joining us from Bamako in Mali. Kengafak Enes, continental, national and continental youth leader, and of course Donald Gateng, who is a youth leader and mediator. Thank you all for joining us today.
It's a pleasure, Mr. Babila.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us in this edition of The Inside. That's it for today. Another edition will be coming up next Sunday. Stay with us.